What I just did earlier today was I published on TikTok. Did you publish on TikTok? I published. That's right, I'm a publisher. No, you're a content generator, a content creator. That's just some idiot coming up with a phrase because they wanted to look good inside of a stupid board meeting. It's called publishing. Okay, it's online publishing. So I posted a video online. I'm publishing. I'm a publisher. Oh, okay. You go ahead and keep saying that, and everybody else is going to keep saying content generator, and let's see which one lasts the longest. Watch and see. Publishing is going to last a lot longer. Why? Because it's been around a lot longer. And you won't be around to see it outlast the other. Because why? Publishing has been around since the early hundreds. That's right, when they used to publish newspapers and magazines. Those are called publishers. They publish content. But nonetheless, I digress. We're not here to talk about publishing. Well, actually, we are in a slight manner, only slight. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge accomplishment. A huge accomplishment. I set out to technically avenge the stupidity of our world, where the financial industry has said that it was loaning money to people when there was never a loan. Go ahead, take a look at all the literature. Look up money creation theory. Just look up money creation theory, and then look up, pay attention, this is not your word, this is theirs, fountain pen money. Fountain pen, again, as I explained, fountain pens, for those of you who are too young to understand what a fountain pen was, those were those nice little pens that people used to write with. The ink flowed like a fountain, and it created some beautiful work. Fountain pens were, oh God, they're still sold today, and they're expensive. Fountain pen money, basically, they were creating money originally with fountain pens, just writing it on a ledger. Well, now they create money by typing it into a computer, but they still keep the phrase fountain pen. There you go. Just typing digits on a computer. They're creating it. That's what the credit river case became about. Wasn't about that originally, but it became about that, and that's history, where the Supreme Court of Minnesota somehow claimed that Mr. Mahoney was wrong when he made his decision that he was not going to accept Federal Reserve notes because they were not money under the Constitution. They were not the medium of exchange that was acceptable. That's where Judge Mahoney was incorrect. They had changed the so-called rules, and he couldn't challenge it from the bench. A judge has no way of challenging a statute from the bench. A judge can only rule on controversies, and as a justice of the peace, he didn't have the authority to rule on that controversy. Say what? That's right. You see, there is this thing known as jurisdiction, and jurisdiction requires authority. Somebody's got to be in charge, and he wasn't in charge, and the Supreme Court let him know, and then somebody took him out, more than likely the Federal Reserve, because it was their authority also that he was challenging. He was making them look stupid, and they couldn't allow him to make them look stupid because they were stupid. Now, I'm going to set the phone down for a second. Hopefully you guys will still be able to hear me, but I have muscular dystrophy. I can't keep holding on to that phone this whole trip. Not today. I was tired. I only had 5 hours of sleep last night. That's right, 5 hours again of sleep. But hold on now. It was a good 5 hours. Why? Because I told you guys I have this new mattress, and I actually am getting rest. Now that's surprising. I'm not going to sleep tired and exhausted like I was before. I mean, I literally laid down on that pillow and fell asleep last night after I, took care of all the nonsense because I have a way of winding down, and my winding down period was actually pretty good last evening. All right, let's get back to the event that is the event. Ladies and gentlemen, filing a lawsuit against the Federal Reserve. Of course, we all know the Federal Reserve is not going to ever pay the lawsuit, even if they lose. Why? Well, because the Federal Reserve, a private corporation, if I rule the world, controls the United States. Say, what? What do you mean the Federal Reserve controls the United States? Federal Reserve don't. Oh, my bad. Federal Reserve does control the United States. They control the money supply. He who controls the money supply controls the nation. Oh, and it's the world default currency, so they kind of control the world. Wait a minute. That don't make no sense. How they got so much control? Because that was. Let me give you guys the history if you don't mind. So bear with me for a second as we go back in time. And we're not going to talk about the very beginning. You guys already have the foundation. How two individuals decided to make an agreement and they created a bank. They didn't actually call it a bank at first, but what they did is they received people's deposits. People used to walk around with gold and rocks and leaves and all this other stuff they called mediums of exchanges. And people didn't want to walk around with that all the time. So what these two individuals created was the IOU. IOU, that's right. They just simply said, hey, leave your stuff with us and we'll give you a receipt. An IOU is a receipt, people. That's where it comes from. If you don't believe me, go back and look it up. So they gave them a receipt. And so they would take that receipt to whomever they were working out a deal with, and they would give them that IOU receipt. Now we're talking about a negotiable instrument because the people who had the instrument could come and negotiate with the people who had the product to give me. No, just give me. I don't know. I'm not going to sit up here and make no. Give me exactly what I'm asking for. No, your problem's with him. You're going to give me what I'm asking for, or there's going to be some problems. See, they negotiated. All right? And things tend to work out in that type of negotiation, especially when somebody brings some form of security. Back then, their security was spears, guns, knives, so they brought their security. And when the security showed up, man, everything kind of worked out for everybody, and they could see, deal's over. Ain't no more agreement, ain't no more deal. They settled their contracts back then. Well, the same thing continues today. It ain't changed. Contract settlement is all that this is about. That's all the medium of exchange is settling contracts. Every time you purchase something, you are settling a contract. Now, this you must understand. It is absolutely necessary. Every time you go to acquire property, you are contracting. Everything is contract. Once you get that into your noggin and understand that, then everything gets fine. Everybody gets to be hunky-dory, and nobody gets to cry, and nobody gets to sit up there and be dismayed, hunky-dory. Okay, so now we get to the 1800s. Now that system has gotten a little bit more advanced by now. They have buildings where people would go and make their deposits, because that's what it was. They were depositing and then they were repositing. Okay, again, deposit, go look up the definition. It has the word D in front of it, deposit. There's that word for a reason. The person who has it, who has the property, is positing the property or repositing the property. Okay? And then the person who comes back to get their property, they're also repositing. Why? Because the person who was holding it deposits it into their care. They were holding it as a bailment. Excuse me. That's where the word bailment comes from. They were holding it. They didn't own it. It was a bailment. Now, the United States is holding your property as a bailment. They don't own it. They are only holding your property. Now, how do you get your property back? Well, that's another video. We gonna talk about it, but these words I'm saying, y'all should be looking up. Should not be letting me just talk about these words and y'all not go look it up. Shame on y'all. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 5:20 in the morning. 5 o'clock. That's right. I've been up for almost an hour now. And I am on the road again. It sure feels great to be on the road again. Okay? And because I was on the road, that's why I got to keep my eyes, because guess what? Ooh, let me tell you something. Ain't no traffic this morning. But this is usually the time of morning that people, it's either the same opposite time at night as it is in the morning, just, around midnight, that people tend to get in accidents because they tend to fall asleep. But like I said, I've been getting rest. I am nowhere near feeling sleepy, okay? Not even the slightest, which is unusual. I used to make this trip in the morning, and I used to feel sleepy, but I don't feel sleepy after getting this mattress. I already told you guys what mattress. Go back, watch the videos until you find it. I'm not advertising for the company. I'm not trying to bring my money into nobody else's pocket. They didn't ask me to advertise, and I don't advertise for people. Y'all need to understand that. All right, let's get back to this whole money thing. In 1913, after the people had made it quite clear that they did not want them creating paper and calling it money. Why? Because we would get to the point we are now where they could just create something and say that junk was money, and then everybody and their grandmama be sitting up there counterfeiting or creating more than what was necessary, more than what was required, that type of thing. So they did it anyway, slowly, steadily. 1913, they came up with this stupid act called the Federal Reserve Act. Now, mind you, they had been trying to create that act since the late 1800s, at least 1862, 1863. But they decided to do it subtly. They wanted control. So they started with the game plan back then. And they created the so-called U.S. Bank. Now, not this United States Bank, not the U.S. Bank that exists today. Okay, the U.S. Bank that exists today is a parody of the original United States Bank. Okay, United States Bank, Congress gave authority and control. And then they kind of got rid of that bank, because that bank, man, that bank was doing so much embezzling and taking and swindling that they just said no more. The people said no more, and they kind of like ruined the economy. But no, hold on now. Man don't learn their lesson. No, man just keep repeating the same old stupid all the time. And so man decided, we ain't better than this. Man, we can do better than worse. We gonna worse the better. And so they did worse than better. Because that's what man does. Okay? They did worse than better. Sorry. There was a distraction on my part because there was a vehicle pulling out to the road that I'm on. And the vehicle that was pulling out to the road that I'm on, I wasn't sure if he was going to stop. Because you know how people tend to want to run through stop signs? Well, that was a vehicle pulling out of his driveway. And because he was pulling out of his driveway, I wasn't sure if he had the habit of looking. So I had to focus on his driving. And so that's why I was hesitating. Getting back to the banks and their parody. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1913, the banks helped Congress after their feeble attempt to take advantage of the people and the currency. They helped Congress come up with the Federal Reserve Act. Everything you've seen in the Federal Reserve Act Amendment of 1933, everything you saw there was already the law. They didn't amend anything. What they did is they expanded what was known as eligible paper. And they also expanded the Trading with the Enemy Act. Remember, the Federal Reserve Act was not part of the Trading with the Enemy Act. When they created the Trading with the Enemy Act, they incorporated the Federal Reserve Act. They made it part of the Trading with the Enemy Act. So the amendment to 1933 was an amendment to the Federal Reserve Act. It was an amendment to the Trading with the Enemy Act. The Federal Reserve Act, go take a look, always said that your promissory notes, your drafts, your bills of exchange, your banker's acceptances were eligible papers. That had already been settled, already been decided. However, when they came up with the Trading with the Enemy Act, since the dollar is the world default currency, but it wasn't back then. Pay attention. In the early 1900s, the United States dollar was not the world default currency. That did not happen until 1933. Okay, but they had to prepare for that. That was the Trading with the Enemy Act, applying it to the whole world. And what the banks had decided that everybody was their enemy. That's right, the banks decided that everybody was their enemy because everybody didn't want their paper money. And since everybody didn't want their paper money, the bank said, y'all gonna take our paper money. And the people said, we ain't taking nothing. And that's why they got rid of that first bank. And because they got rid of that first bank, wait, let me tell you something. They like, oh no, y'all ain't getting rid of us. We gonna be back. And they're screaming and kicking and shouting that they were gonna be back and they were gonna get even. Well, they came back in 1933 after shortening the money supply. And took total control. Gave that Hoover fella, you know that Hoover, the one who was sucking up all that oxygen and all that dust. Well, yeah, they gave that fool who wasn't even viable at the end of his career. Matter of fact, it says that his health had gotten so bad that other people were making decisions for him. Remind you of anybody? 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 Bueller? Anyway, and so he was approached by someone with the Federal Reserve. He doesn't actually name the person. He just says that it was someone with the Federal Reserve. And they told him what they were getting ready to do, gave him a letter, which is known as the March 9, 1933 Act. Seriously, no joke. Congress did not write that. The Federal Reserve wrote that junk. Okay? Understand this. Congress did not write that. The March 9, 1933 Act was not written by Congress. Congress even admitted that they did not write it. They admitted that they didn't even know who wrote it in the first place. They just knew that they were voting on it, which is illegal. Yeah, that violates the law. So, there you go. Now, in 1933, Congress says, look, we can't just do this because the people ain't going to accept it. We got to do something for the people that they will accept. So Congress got together with the president, Franklin D. Delano, and they decided that they were going to push it through. They were going to make incentives. That's right, they couldn't make out-incentives, so they had to make some inroads, and they made incentives for the people. Everybody, go back to the 1930s and 1940s, you had very little homeless people. You had all of these programs that they had been doing for years. The Homestead program was created for, they were created for a particular segment of our population. The Homestead, go look at the Homestead Act, people. That junk is still law. The Homestead Act, man, y'all should be able to take that and do some damage I'm not joking. The Homestead Act. Trust me. Well, anyway, let's get back to La Di Da Land. I'm gonna let the truck pass me, the one that's behind me. He's a little ways away, coming down the hill. I don't do 70 miles an hour on this road. I only do 60. Sometimes I may do 65. The speed limit is a back road, 2-lane road. So the speed limit is supposed to be 55, and I do 5 miles over the speed limit. And, like I said, sometimes I may do 65, but no more than that. And that's only sometimes on the straightaways. There ain't too many straightaways. Like right now, this straightaway gonna last for about another 45 seconds. And then it's gonna go back to curving and whining and dining. And, it's gonna be sitting up there wanting to, can I take you out for the night? Okay? And so I don't feel like going out. And so I don't usually let it take me out. But it takes a whole lot of other people out who ain't paying attention. All right? Let's get back to the story. So Congress in 1933, they decided, okay, we're going to let the banks have control, but we're going to do something else for the people. And I think President Roosevelt may have done this. Now remember, the banks were doing something as well. They were making all the people property. Okay? They were making all the people property. Well, the people didn't want to be property. But they were also making all of the people banks. Y'all heard me? They were making all of the people banks and making all of their paper money. That's how now, especially converting all of your paper to securities. Ooh-wee. That's how they get away with it, y'all. They started back in 1933 making your junk securities. Before there was the Securities Act, there was the 1933 Bank Act. 1933 Bank Act is the March 9th, 1933 Act. Okay? 1933 Bank Act is the March 9th, 1933 Act. I'm sorry. There was a vehicle in front of me with its high beams coming at me around the turn and going slightly downhill. And coming around that turn and noticing his high beams, ooh-wee, I wasn't really expecting that. Then I got the truck. He's finally caught up to me, and he wants to ride my bumper. And I'm not going to play that. We going to do my speed. You don't get to come behind me and push me. Sorry. I'm tired of everybody with their high beams, so now my high beam's on because I want to be able to see. I'm sorry. The truck behind me, he gonna do my speed for the next couple of miles because I ain't got time to do his speed. When you come behind me, I'm not gonna go slower. I used to go slower just so that they get the understanding, but I'm not gonna go slower. But he understands me now because I'm going slower because he's on my bumper now. You don't get to push me down a hill. We're going to do my speed. I'm in control. Pay attention, pole position. This is my world. Okay? This is my being in control. All right, let's get back to my story. We got the banks recognizing what eligible securities are. And that's all of your papers, all of your documents, all of your securities. Those are eligible securities. And because you have eligible securities, what they figured out is a way, what the Securities Exchange Act is making those securities, and they did it. Oh, by the way, the truck that was on my bumper, He wasn't even going no place. He just turned off into a property just now. He, no reason in the world for him to be doing that stupid stuff. But like I said, we were going to do my speed, not his. Okay, all he was doing was a couple of miles because he is a worker. He works on a particular ranch because we have a lot of ranches out here. Like dressings and salads, we have a lot of that going on. Well, anyway, they gave people the right of having their paper be valuable. Why? So that they could take the unsuspecting people's paper and market it. What they market it as? Securities. Again, you didn't need a Securities Act because they had already made them securities. They had already made your paper securities. But the people didn't know this. The people don't read the acts, the laws of Congress. If they were to read it, then they would find this out. But the people are not too bright. The people don't know that they gave Congress all of that power. So now that the banks know that we can now make this into securities and we can make ourselves richer than everybody else without them knowing it. That's why you have your Rothschilds and your JP Morgans and all of that, because that's what they did. They took the people's paper and they marketed it. Remember, there is no such thing as fractional reserve banking. Go ahead, find the law. There is no such law. Fractional reserve banking, you want to know the Administrative Procedures Act, that piece of junk? That piece of junk only applies to, pay attention, government agencies. Doesn't apply to the people. Corporations are government agencies because they're registered with the state. Every corporation is a creature of the state, receiving its existence and chartered power through the state, and only may act at the dictates of the state. Go back and read Redfield versus Fisher. That Washington case explains everything to you. Redfield versus Fisher. Go take a look. It explains, just put creature of the state when you do your word search, and you'll see it. That's a principle, people. That's not just the Supreme Court of the state of Washington deciding that they want to just use some stupid words. They are stating a principle. So the Administrative Procedures Act was created for the administrative corporation. Now you know, and that's one to grow on. All right, let's get back to the conversation, if you don't mind. With the advent of this new Trading with the Enemy Act amendment that was created, the banks could breathe a sigh of relief because all they had to do was be patient. They had already gotten World War II off. Wait, who do you think was funding Germany? Who do you think was funding Hitler? And then who do you think was funding Britain when Britain got into the war? And then their ally. It's called the Anglo-American dual world power. Look up Anglo-American power. You'll see that's Britain and the United States. They have been doing this for at least a century. Coming together as one unit. That's how Britain still controls the 7 seas. And China and Russia are, well, they're not realizing it. They already knew it. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to interrupt that controlling the 7 seas thing. Okay, because ain't nobody gave them permission to control the 7 seas. That's why you see China is building all these ships. Y'all don't understand. China has more warships than the United States ever could have. You better believe. Y'all better believe. Y'all better believe. Y'all better believe. They're putting those ships in that water, and they're just stationing them, people. When it's time, or at least this is the plan, when it's time, they're going to be like, honey, look who's coming. Yeah, they're coming for dinner. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. So, the United States right now is keeping up the disruption. See, the United States doesn't want to give away power. That's why every time it works out a deal, it always works out a deal where it's on top. The United States never creates even Steven agreement. All right, now we have the banks. The banks are literally supposed to be taking people's promissory notes and, hold on, and they take that promissory note and they convert it to a security, dollar for dollar. So the promissory note is the payment. Why? Because the banks get to use it as security. They're purchasing the promissory note. They're not lending anything, they're purchasing it. And there's an even exchange thing because what the borrower gets is the even exchange. Nothing less, nothing more. That was the design. Well, the banks decided, oh no, we're going to keep pretending that that's not what happened. We're going to keep pretending that they owe us money, and then we're going to get the sheriffs and the counties to work with us. And there you go. Now, not every sheriff, not every county personnel knows the law. Now, I'm going to tell it to you like it is because you need to understand it. They are in a position that they're supposed to know the law because ignorance thereof is unexcusable and inexcusable. Okay, there is no excuse for not knowing this stuff, not even with any of you. But they, because they don't know, they go by tradition. Tradition means you owe, you're going to pay, and if you don't pay, you get kicked out. That's the games the judges play with everybody. Okay? I got a judge, they just foreclosed on a family and ordered the property to be sold in November. Excuse me, why over 90 days? And after holding an ex parte hearing too? Why would the judge do that? So now I'm going to send them after that judge. Now we're going to make this judge pay attention. Ladies and gentlemen, you can file a complaint against the judge, and you have to file a complaint. And then you seriously sue the judge's bond in court. I know some of y'all have been trying to do this and you don't know what to do next. Look, I can't hold y'all hand. Y'all have to know how to sue. Many of you have, I got one guy who filed Chapter 11 after, but I told him this is what we were doing. We were setting people up for this with their trusts, the mega trusts, and man, he went and filed Chapter 11 before we could even get the mega trust out to everybody and the paperwork done and all of that. And I told him, nobody told you to do that. So he got a consult. And so because he had a consult, he had the mega trust, then I showed him what to do next. I'm not going to do that for the rest of you. But I did that for him, what to do next, because of the situation he was in. Now, he's a Eonite. What is an Eonite? An Eonite is those people who's so stuck on Eon's jock that Eon can't even move his right leg to relax himself in his car while he's driving. Okay? Got muscular dystrophy and I'll be cramping up because everybody be on my jock and won't let me just relax. So there you go, Eonites. I didn't create the phrase. A young man named Chris Unseen created the phrase, Eonites. Lord have mercy. Again, not my phrase, but yes, this is one of those individuals, and so I helped him and gave him something else. I'm going to do this for you. In bankruptcy, in the law, there is something you must do when you have an estate in order to gain control of your securities. I have not seen anybody